Today is September 14th, 2025. I'm up here in the Copco Valley. This would be the Beaver Creek, the East Beaver Creek. Thought I'd come up today and kind of see what everything is looking like. We've been getting some off and on rain and sprinkle storms, but I thought I'd come and see kind of what's going on in Beaver Creek and see what equipment is still here. I can see that there's some excavators and dump trucks that are still here. I'm not sure when they might start pulling out as we get closer to winter. But I'm just kind of curious to see what kind of changes I see from the last time that I was up here. But you can see that they've got some piles of dirt going on. And then you can see out in this region where they've moved more dirt to, and they're spreading it out down in that section. So we'll pause it and head on up the road. So we drove up the road just a little bit up Beaver Creek. You can see that they're kind of digging something out right there. You can see that they've put the planks across Beaver Creek so that they can bring the equipment back and forth. But you can also start to see that they're putting a lot of that woody debris down in the bottom here. Which, like I said, I don't think that, to me at least, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I know some people that said it could be beaver habitat. But I don't know. But it looks like they have a structure there in the creek. At least it looks like it from here. That one also looks like it could be. It's hard to tell from here if it's going across the creek. But I don't understand why we've got all the woody debris coming out on this side. I don't know how high the flows get in this creek bed when we do have the higher flows. Typically during winter, we don't necessarily travel up here on this side of the road because the road is in such bad shape. You'd get stuck and then you'd never get out. So I'm not really sure what this creek flows like or I should say what it flowed like during last winter, but I'm not sure what they got going with all the woody debris. And this is kind of what this whole area is looking like. You can see that they've moved some of those materials up on the footprint, and it is up in that region, up and around the bend, where we saw the same thing happening up there. So we'll see what that looks like when we get around the bend. So we drove down the road just a little bit so you can kind of get a better angle of everything here. So you can see that they've got all the sticks sticking straight up. That almost looks like it's in the creek. I don't know, I guess another something that somebody threw out there is that all this woody debris could be for flooding. It could slow the flow, but I guess it's just going to depend on the momentum. I don't know how wide they expect this to go, if this is for quote-unquote flood control. It's been thrown out there for beaver. I don't understand why you'd have sticks sticking straight up out of the ground. I know that they said that, restoration, that they do stuff like this. I guess I just don't understand the rhyme or reason. So anyways, this is what it's looking like right here. We'll head on up the road. So we drove up the road just a little bit. I'm not sure what the rhyme and reason, like I keep saying this, I don't understand what all these wood pieces are for. Maybe they're thinking that this gets really wide come flood time event. I don't know. You can see these wood, I wouldn't say fence looking things, but I'm just not sure what the purpose of it is. When the creek is off beyond that, And they've got a lot of the wooden sticks like down planted in the ground. I'm sure you could see that. Trying to look around all the trees here as there's more in the creek there. I might see if I can get another vantage point, but this is looking up Beaver Creek, so you can see that they've got a lot of that same planking, or I don't know what you want to call it, log material, debris. It's hard to tell if that is a living bush. I don't know if Beaver Creek would get that wide if it floods. I mean, that's a pretty wide span that they've got going all the way up. Because you can see where the creek flows over off on that side, and it's like they just got a lot of woody debris sunk into the ground. I'm sorry if it's shaking. I'm backing up so I can see further up. But they've got like this structure type of pattern, it seems like, going all the way down to well, where I kind of started the video at, this top section of Beaver Creek. And we're gonna make our way around up that way. I don't know why it gets blurry when I get that zoomed in. Pan out so you can kind of see this whole area that I'm looking at. So I'm going to make my way around. Kind of show you what it's looking like on the other side of this tree. It almost looks like they've got a root wad. I'm just curious though, if we do get the storms like we did last winter, how much of this is actually going to stay and how much of this is going to float down and into the Klamath River and continue on down the river system. So anyways, I'm going to pause it and head on around. So we come up the road a little bit and you can definitely see that they've got the logs across the creek. So this is kind of what it's looking like from up in this region and looking down, which is kind of hard to see because there's a lot of trees. But anyways, that's kind of what it's looking like down. But they're kind of doing that same thing all up the creek bed. So I'm going to pause it here in just a second and we'll head on up. But that looks like a good decent root wad that they've got planted in the river, or sorry, in the creek. So I walked down here into Beaver Creek, did not see any signs anywhere that says no trespassing. So this is kind of what it's looking like. I'll walk down here closer to the creek. I'm gonna be careful because that's all cracked. But you can see that the creek really isn't flowing that much. It's kind of flowed over the banks here. But you can see kind of like all the woody debris. That one is actually across the creek bed. So this is kind of what it's looking like from up here. I'd say that's 2-3 foot wide maybe. Doesn't look to be very deep. You can see that they've got some woody debris across the creek right up there. But this is kind of what it's looking like going down the creek bed. Trying to gauge how far across it is from this side to the other side. I'm thinking it's like 150 feet from this bank to the other bank. But you can kind of see what it's looking like. I'll walk down and see if I can see a better vantage point up here. I'll pause it while I go around all the tules. So I didn't walk very far from where I was. So that's kind of looking upstream. Could tell that they hit this with the bucket. You can kind of see all the vegetation that they've got going off in here. And the tree that goes across, which you could see that before. You can see the creek right here. But this is kind of what this whole area is looking like. You can see it kind of meandering down. That log also goes across the creek. You can see the root wad of a log that they put across. But like I said, I'm not understanding the rhyme and reason to all the woody debris. I'm sure that there is, but if this ever floods, I don't foresee this flooding 100 to 150 feet across here. So I'm gonna pause it. So we're kind of losing our sun. It's hard to tell if these twigs that they have planted in the ground, if they're alive. That one looks alive because I could see some greenery on it. There is some greenery on some of these, so I don't know if they're planting live stuff in here. But there's something interesting that was noticed is if you look at the top of some of these wood pieces, that they've kind of chopped them up. They're not flat. So I'm not sure why they would do that. But a lot of these pieces, you can see that they've diagonaled and kind of cut slits in the top of them going back and forth. So like I said, if we do get a big winter storm this year with a lot of moisture and this does flow more, I'm curious to see how much of this stays here. And I'm kind of curious to see what this does this winter. Obviously, when we get to winter time, we don't really travel up on this side of the road because the roads get pretty nasty and slimy and it's easy to get stuck. So I'll come up here as often as I can just to see how things look. But when the roads get really bad, then I'm not going to be coming up here anymore. So anyways, I'm going to pause it and head on down the road. So I came around the other side of Beaver Creek. And so this is kind of like what it's looking like down in here on this side. You can see that they've got trees in the creek right there. They've got trees in the creek right there. You can kind of see it's a steep drop off right here. You can see it kind of widens out down here towards the bottom. It's getting kind of hard to see now without the sun, but you can see all the woody debris that are down there in the bottom. I'd say that section, I don't know, is probably 150, 200 feet across down there. So I'm not sure, like the woody debris that they have over in that section, what the purpose of them would be. It almost looks like they've got some plants growing out over there. I don't know if this creek would get that wide during the high flows during the winter. Like I said, all of this is just very interesting to me. You can see that there's some water starting to sub over here, which tells me that the water table is high with all the storms that we had this last winter and through the spring and the summer. We've had some rainstorms even recently. But that's kind of what it's looking like down the creek bed. So I'll pause it. So I've come down the road just a little bit. So that section over here, there in that area is what we were looking at when we first came in. You can see that the mounds that they have here. You can see those planks that they have down there, which must be for their heavy equipment. We saw some going across the creek. You can see that they still have some more logs in here. It's hard to kind of see the woody debris that they've placed. And plus, we don't have our sun right now, which makes it a little bit harder to see. But we can see all that from the other side. They have a little dump truck. And you can kind of see some of that woody debris over there on that side of the creek. So all in all, this is kind of what this whole area is looking like. Starting to cool off a little bit. That breeze has got a little bit of coolness to it. Feels kind of nice. And so that would be the direction that you're looking towards, where the Copco Dam used to be at the west end. You can still see a couple excavators down there. So that's what it's looking at from right here. So it came down the road just a little bit more. That's kind of where I was looking at. You can see some of that woody debris up there. So this is kind of what this whole area is looking like. You can see the dirt piles down below me that they've pulled up. Like I said, if we do get any heavy rains, all that dirt that they've moved up is going to just flush right back down into the creek. You can see all the piles that they have down here. And you can see all the dirt that they've moved over there, the darker dirt, that's what's been moved. All out in that area. And if you look in certain spots here in Beaver Creek, sorry, zooming the wrong way, you can see some of the woody debris that's down in there that we were looking at from the other side. Like I said, it's going to be interesting. It's all going to depend on what kind of a winter we have. If we have a real wet winter, if we have a mild winter. If it's a winter like we had last winter, it's not going to look good. I can foresee a lot of that woody debris that they've actually placed in and around the creek. If it's flowing pretty good, I can see a lot of that washing out. Anyways, this is what we're looking like. I think that this is it for the day. It's been interesting indeed.